Well, Razorback fans, a lot of you have asked about this Razorback defense, and it's not looking very good. But the question becomes, what will it take for a Razorback defense to be elite? Well, let's talk about it on today's Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Nabors. I am also the host of Inside Arkansas Live, which you can catch every weekday starting at noon on Inside Arkansas and InsideArkansas.com. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner, and you can visit FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Friday as you finally made it, as we are right here on the cusp of the weekend. Roughly about, I guess, what is it at this point? 15 days away? 1-5. Ryan Mallett, rest in peace. But we are getting closer and closer. But we're going to talk a little bit about some of the projections for Arkansas as they start to really come in from major outlets, and if there are any believers in the Razorbacks. But also, I'm going to give a few recommendations to some Razorback fans, or at least to the Razorback public in general, when it comes to this upcoming season and just in sports in general, which I feel like you probably won't care about, but that's okay, because I think you will, and I think it'll be pretty important. But I wanted to start today's podcast and talk about the defense. You know, yesterday we had a chance to hear from Deke Adams, the defensive line coach for Arkansas. And you've heard me talk about here on this podcast about my concerns with the defensive line and the lack of pass rush. And then, you know, when we talked about the secondary, some of the concerns that's going on there, but also maybe the talent that's there. And with linebacker, I like Xavier Sori, I like Steven Diggs, but is there enough? Is that going to be enough for Arkansas? So there's just a lot of hope, but mystery. But if you're leaning towards one way or the other, it looks like it could be a problematic defense this year. And if that ends up happening, if that ends up being the case, then many of you are going to feel the same way I do when you start sitting there and you're looking at the numbers and you're looking at the stats and you're looking at the blown coverages, you're looking at the all day in the pocket for the other teams, and you start wondering to yourself, why can't we have a good defense? Why can't we have a defense like anybody? Or why can't we just have an average defense, above average defense, a defense that's, you know, one of the top 5 in the SEC? Why can't we have that? And it's such a legitimate and justifiable question, but it's also not a very simplistic, or it is not a very complex answer. It's pretty simplistic. Now, I could sit here and tell you about hiring certain defensive coordinators and having certain schemes. You know, sometimes I feel like a lot of us, if we just hop on NCAA football 2K26 or whatever it is, we get on there and we look at the playbook. We're like, all right, well, you know, do we do a 3-3-5 here? Maybe a 4-2-6. We do a multiple defense, 3-4. What are we looking at here? And then you decide, it's like, oh, okay, well, this type of defense is really what's best, and you can play it against that. And then you start thinking about, all right, well, you know, what do we have my corners like lined up here? Or where's the safeties need to be? Do I do bump coverage? Do I do man-to-man? Do I do zone? All that stuff. And listen, that is all important. It's all part of the game. Yes, you have to have a good defensive coordinator and a good defensive staff. Yes, you have to have an idea of when to call certain plays, when to take certain risks, how to game plan, all of those things. So don't get me wrong. Those are all important. But if you want to have an elite level defense, it's a very simple thing. And it's a thing that can really overcome any of the other major deficiencies on the team, more so than offense. And that is a simple thing of players. Best players. Because I don't really care what defense you run. I don't really care what play you call on certain downs. I don't care about any of that if you don't have an elite level defensive end being able to get after the quarterback. I don't care what type of blitzes you dial up if you don't have a defensive tackle or your interior lineman being able to stop the hole up front. I don't care what type of pass defenses you're going to be throwing around and schemes you're going to be throwing around if you don't have a cornerback that can go man-to-man coverage and shut down a wide receiver. Because if you have those pieces, if you have those types of players, individual talents, the rest of it was going to take care of itself. Plain and simple. You may disagree, but it's the truth. I look at the ultimate example of when Arkansas last had a great defense. Statistically speaking, it's always referenced. I reference it all the time. Some of you are probably tired of hearing about it, but that 2014 defense, was that because Rob Smith was just this elite level defensive coordinator? A lot of you probably didn't even remember he was the defensive coordinator at that time, but he was. Was he just doing something so unique and different that made his defense rank 10th in the country in scoring defense? Like, that's where Arkansas was. They ranked 10th in the country in scoring defense. Was it the scheme that he had? Or was it the type of play calls that he had? No. It started truly with two players, 2 of the 9 on the field, or 2 of the 11 on the field. Trey Flowers and Darius Philon. Now, some of you are going to say, well, what about Martrell Spate? Well, stay with me on this. Trey Flowers and Darius Philon were high-level players, NFL caliber players. Trey Flowers played in the NFL quite a bit, was a guy that was a force to be reckoned with, was able to stop the run effectively and get after the quarterback, and deemed himself to be somebody that had to be double-teamed so often. And when you have a defensive end that's having to be double-teamed, guess what? That opens up somebody else. And what that would open up was Darius Philon on the inside. Because suddenly you have to have him go through the offensive line. Well, if they already have a guard helping out over here or a tight end helping out over here, it's overloading the talent over on this side. So suddenly the center kind of has to move over a little bit. And it just becomes, as they like to call it, the Bermuda Triangle, because you have 2 elite level defensive linemen that are right next to each other that are drawing so much attention that guess what happens when that takes place? Martrell Spate, the linebacker in the back, he's got it right there. He's got all the attention being paid to him. He just goes right through the gap between them and makes plays. Honestly, folks, that was that defense. That was it. They had some other players on the team, and I'm not downplaying them, but that was it. That's what made that defense so good. I mean, you had Tevin Mitchell in the secondary. You had Rohan Gaines. You had Alan Turner, Braylon Mitchell. I mean, you had some fine players. I think Brandon Lewis was on one side. Dietrich Wise was on the team, but he played a little bit, but he was still fairly young. But it started right there. And because of those players, those 2 guys, those 2 defensive linemen, it caused so many issues for offenses that it made Arkansas's defense so great. It didn't matter the scheme. It didn't matter the play calling. It didn't matter any of that. You just had 2 guys that were game-changing playmakers. And when you had that, it opened up everybody else to make plays. That's the difference. And that's what it takes at a place like Arkansas. Now, it's easy to say it. It's one thing to do it. And it's one thing to hit on a lot of these players. But if you're just able to have something like that, at least two bona fide NFL caliber, big time defensive players, it's going to open up those opportunities for the other players. And on offense, you don't really have that same concept because it does matter a whole lot more about the offensive scheme, about the play calling, about the camaraderie and the togetherness and playing on the same page. Where something like defensive line or the defensive end, it's just like, hey, you're on your own little island over here. You got to win this one-on-one matchup. Or the cornerback, it's like, hey, you're on your island over here. One-on-one matchup. You got to beat them. Go. It's like, yes, you got to play together. You got to communicate together, but it's about those one-on-one matchups and stopping somebody. And Arkansas just hasn't really had that, at least not to the extent and not to the level that is needed to be able to be a high-level team in the SEC. Now, they can, at some point in time, they can make it happen. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but they can get back to that. But sometimes I get a little bit frustrated when some people just think it's a defensive coordinator problem. Or if it's the safeties coach isn't very good. Or, they're just, the defensive line, they're not calling enough blitzes on them. They need to blitz more. It's like, yes, it does have an impact. It is something that does matter a little bit. But if you don't have the Jimmies and Joes on defense, none of it will matter. I mean, truly think about it. 2006 was a great Razorback defense, statistically speaking, comparatively speaking. What'd you had? You had Jamal Anderson on the outside. 13 and a half sacks that year, Jamal Anderson had. 13 and a half. That's over an average of over a sack a game. That's what he had. You also had Chris Houston, who was a high-level NFL caliber cornerback that got drafted early in the second round. Almost a first-rounder. There you go. 2 big-time players. And even a couple years ago, I think back to like the Drew Sanders year where he was elite at sacks, and Jordan Dominic also had a lot of sacks. That could have been set up, but unfortunately, the secondary was so bad, it didn't really help you out that way. But all of you who wonder that and are going to wonder that if this defense struggles, what's it going to take? Why can't we ever have it? What's the problem? You got to have the dudes. More so than anything, more so than any sport, more so than any side of the ball. You simply just got to have the dudes. And you got to have multiple dudes. It's hard to come by. It's hard to make it work. But if you think about the big-time programs, the ones that have really good defenses, that's where it comes into play. That make it simple enough for you? I'm sure you agree, right? Totally. But I'll tell you what, we're going to talk about the believers or the non-believers of the Razorback football team coming up next. So stay with us here on Locked On Razorbacks podcast. All right, Razorback fans, I am here to tell you about our friends over at Wayfair. As summer winds down, there's something nice about getting back into the routine that you all love. And Wayfair makes it easy to set yourself up for that season ahead. From bedding and linens to storage solutions for every room, Wayfair is your one-stop shop to refresh your home. The thing is that whenever you're looking at your house and you're like, oh, I need all these things, and you don't really know where to start, where to begin, you don't know how much it's going to be, but you want to have high-quality things, well, don't worry about it, because Wayfair is going to have you covered. Then we're going to make sure that it fits your style for the style of your home, and it's going to keep it modern and refresh. Best thing about it is that the delivery is fast and free, even if it's something big. And it's very convenient to find exactly what you're looking for, no matter what it is. And it's all in one place, and it's at a price that will fit your budget. This is the perfect time to get your home ready. So get it ready. It doesn't matter if it's organizing, if it's upgrading the workspace, or even making weeknights easier. Get organized, get refreshed, and get back to the routine for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. All right, so moving on into the next segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. So we got some interesting topics here to talk about when it comes to the projections and predictions, which we'll have later as we get to closer to the end of the season, or to the end of the fall camp, and then into the actual season itself. But I know there's an element of people that may not feel very confident about Arkansas. And I'm talking about you Razorback fans. That may not feel very confident about Arkansas winning at a high level. Some of you may not exactly want to start believing until you see something, which I understand. And some of you just may be ever the optimist. And some of you who may be optimists, you don't understand why people may be negative. You don't understand why people may be down. You may be starting to feel yourself and say this team, this season is going to be a lot better than what you think it is. And that's fine. Like, I am not going to argue with you. I'm not going to make you feel bad. If you want to be that optimist, so be it. But I just want to clarify something. I look at pretty much everybody, and when I say everybody, outlets, platforms, people of note who watch college football, who cover college football on a national scale. And I like to look at their write-ups and projections and things like that. But almost all of them come out with some sort of ranking. specifically in conference power rankings, if you will, order of finish for the SEC, things like that. And I went with CBS Sports. I went with ESPN. I went with, I think Sports Illustrated had one, On 3, 24/7 Sports, where I was like, all of them who have put out any sort of list when it comes to ranking conferences and power rankings and all of that. Do you want to know where the average Arkansas has been? Do you want to know? Exactly where they were picked in the SEC, in the SEC media days, 13th. Actually, I think they were picked to finish 14th, but still, 13th. That's the average. Do you want to know the highest? And I'm sure somebody could find somebody that has them higher, but you want to know the highest of all the ones that I saw that I have Arkansas ranked at? 12th. That's the highest. Now, that may be depressing to some of you. It's depressing to me. I don't like it. I wish it wasn't that way. But it's a reality. It's the world we live in. I look at this as something to point to if any of you feel like people are maybe too negative, or maybe if people are, maybe if you're not understanding why people are so down on the Hogs. It's because everybody thinks it. Nobody thinks this team is going to be any good. Now, you can sit here and say, well, I don't care what the national media says. Fine. National media gets it wrong quite often. But find me somebody that actually truly believes that this team is going to be good. Top half of the SEC. Having a power ranking of a single digit in the SEC. Like, find me somebody. I'm honestly asking. Besides yourself. Maybe throw that into the mix. I challenge you, and I don't think you'll find anybody. Nationally, regionally, locally. Sure, there may be some sunshine pumpers. There's maybe some that may start, well, this team could go 9-3. Sure. But look at it from the realistic lens and the unbiased lens, the objective lens. And look at the situation to where Arkansas finds themselves in football-wise. And truly ask yourself why you think they're going to be good. Why you think they're going to be great. Now, again, I want to reiterate, I'm not hating on you if you do. It's one of the very few years I've not been overly optimistic, just to be honest. But I'm asking you that simply because I need you to understand the perspective of where fans are coming from who aren't too high on the year, who don't feel like this team is going to go out and shock the world and shock the SEC and win all these games. We are all hopeful that it does happen. And I would love nothing more than to eat so much crow and to be so wrong about this team if they went out and they won double-digit games. I would be the first one to say I was wrong, and I'd be the first one to give an apology to anybody, to this team, to anybody that was involved for doubting them. 100% I will do that. Because that, to me, is the priority. That, to me, is what should be desired, regardless of your own expectation. If the team wins, whether you thought they were going to suck or you thought they were going to be great, I'm going to be happy. I would rather the Hogs be good than me be right. And I'm just hopeful that I can find and see somebody legitimate that actually has the hope that this team's going to be good. It seems to rest on the shoulders of Talon Green, which is fair or unfair, however you want to look at it. But if it ends up being him, then that's great. If it ends up being the reason why, that's great. But it's hard to find many times that you felt this about Arkansas and where they rank down low. In fact, as weird as it is, I think it's worse because there's no divisions in the SEC anymore. You can't even be like, it's like you're even further down the list. It's one thing to say, we were picked to finish 6th in the SEC out of 7 teams. or SEC West out of 7 teams than saying, oh, we're picked to finish 14th out of 16. You know, there's a big difference between those. But I just want to see if anybody does believe, and if they do believe, why. I'd like to know. And I would love for them to be right. Would love for them to be right. I got a recommendation for all the Razorback fans out there for Razorback games and everything too. I want to give this. Some people disagree with me on Twitter, but it doesn't matter because I'm going to get into it and you're going to listen. You're going to like it. We'll get to that next. So stay with us here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. All right, Razorback fans, I'm here to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP or eyeing a long shot division winner or ready to crown your Super Bowl champion before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. You can even parlay some of the division winner dark horses for all these things too. It all happens with FanDuel. So visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. It's FanDuel. Play your game. All right, so final segment here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I tweeted about this, and again, it's not anything of note, but I think people had enough of a reaction to it for me to respond and to talk a little bit about it. There were 2 things that I thought about with Razorback athletics and Razorback events that happens at games that I just feel like everyone needs to get on the same page with 2 things. There's more. I could spend a whole time talking about this, but I'm not going to bore everybody. Here's my thing. Okay, for instance, everybody that wants to do their own version of Dixieland Delight, have at it. I don't necessarily care for it happening at Arkansas, but since it's happening at pretty much every other SEC school, everyone's got their own little version. And so if you insist upon doing it, if you insist upon that happening and having your own version, Razorback fans, here's my suggestion. You know how the song lyrics go, and you know how the teams that you talk about. It needs to be simply a F Texas and LSU and A&M too. My Dixieland Delight. That's the way it needs to be for Arkansas. It's fitting, it's unique, it's special, and it works. It makes sense. It sounds good because you got to have the syllables right and everything. Go with that one. It makes sense. But on a more serious note, the other thing that I have never understood as to why Razorback fans don't do this, I try to do it, and I think we had it for a little bit in the student section when I was there for basketball. But in football, when Arkansas is about to kick off or whoever's about to kick off, what happens? Well, you're calling the hogs. You're wooing. You're wooing until the kick happens. And then as soon as the kick happens, you yell pig suey. Happens all the time, right? Well, at the beginning of every game, guess what happens every beginning of every game? There's a kickoff, right? Well, so you're always going to guarantee that certain thing is going to take place there. So it needs to happen, and I think it needs to happen for other sports and all the other sports, in fact. For basketball, for instance, what happens at the very beginning, the very first thing of a basketball game? There's a tip-off. Well, they call it tip-off. So what it needs to be is Arkansas fans wooing there at Bud Walton Arena until the ball is tossed up in the air, or the ball is tipped, they say there at one shining moment, and then you do pig suey. Needs to happen. Baseball, same thing. What happens at the very first thing of baseball? First pitch. So I think for the first pitch, especially when it'll be at home in Baum Walker, you're going to have your Razorback pitcher throwing the first pitch. So do the same thing. When he's up at there at the mound about to throw, start your wooing. Pig suey as the first pitch comes around. Do it for all the sports. Doesn't matter the sport. Just do it for all the sports. It's unique, it's fun, and it should be done. It should be encouraged. But as we know, you get these people sometimes in whatever department that's going on there at the U of A when it comes to fan interaction and game day atmosphere, and you get these people straight out of, just graduated from Stetson University who do these researches on what NBA stadiums or NFL stadiums or the Savannah Bananas do and how fun it would be, and then that's what you get at games, and it's not unique. It's not to Arkansas. I would love nothing more than to be a consultant or an advisor on how to make the game interactions with fans better and how to be more consistent with it and how to make it unique enough for Arkansas. Because Arkansas's had a lot of unique things in their past. I'm not saying they're going to get an old man yelling at clouds that everybody just needs to sit on their hands and they ain't listening to that rap music. No, I'm talking about things that people can be a part of and feel special about and feel unique. That's unique to Arkansas and nobody else. You know, anybody can do the swag surf song, but it's not unique to Arkansas. You need to find things that are unique to Arkansas and stick with it. Make it happen. I'm here if you need me. I'll give you my rate once you actually, reach out and want me to be a part of it. Appreciate each and every one of you listening and watching into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter at John Nabors Show for any questions, comments, concerns you may have. We'll keep it going from then. Same podcast time, same podcast channel next Monday. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you then.